Have I picked up this gorgeous Timex watch just in time? Morning guys, and welcome back to the channel. The reason I say that is, well, I've just been on timex.com and this watch no longer appears on that website. There is a very similar watch in a different color scheme which is on the site but currently out of stock. I then went on to timex.co.uk. This watch is available on that site, but it is massively discounted from £160 down to £110. That tells me they're looking to shift the stock they currently have. Maybe this watch hasn't sold as well as they planned. So yeah, it would be a real shame if they didn't produce more of these watches, because I think they are gorgeous. Although I must confess, I've only ever seen pictures. I've never handled one. So yeah, I'm looking forward to unboxing this thing and sharing with you my first impressions. And the Timex I have been referring to is this gorgeous Timex Q Falcon Eye. Look at this thing. I picked up the green dial version, which I do much prefer over the blue dial with gold bezel version. I think this thing is gorgeous. Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting the plastic off and taking a good look. Right, there we go. I think that is all the plastic removed. Well, my first impressions are the bracelet does feel out of proportion with the size and chunkiness of the case. I know it's not a huge watch, but the bracelet tapers down to, well, a very thin width down here, and it just feels very, very thin. But then when you look at the watch and the side profile with that crystal, it's acrylic crystal, it's quite chunky, isn't it? And from the top down, it doesn't look like a tiny watch, and yet, yeah, the bracelet does seem, well, out of proportion. But I'm sure they are keeping in mind the original watch when they set out to design this watch. So yeah, I'm sure they know better than I do. But anyway, that's just my first impression. But I'm not disappointed in the way it looks. The dial is gorgeous. Love that color green and that Cote de Genève. I think I've said that right, or close enough. On the dial. Of course, the second hand isn't hitting the markers. Well, it looks to be perfectly in between, doesn't it? But yeah, it's a case, shape, and a style of watch that I really enjoy. I have been getting, well, increasingly more interested in watches, quartz watches from the 70s and 80s, of course. I haven't forgotten about the Vintage Japanese Watch Company. Andy runs that website. Yeah, he sells a lot of watches from that era, and I've bought a few watches from him, actually. I love them. They are incredible, and yeah, a lot of them look very, very similar to this, understandably. But yeah, £120 I paid for this. At the moment, it seems like reasonable value. I like the fact that they've kept this removable section for a battery change. That's pretty cool, isn't it? Yeah, the finishing seems to be nice, I have to say. The polished surfaces look nice enough. The transition between that flat brushed surface and that polished chamfered edge seems nice and crisp, although I haven't seen it under macro yet. But yeah, this thing is, well, really all about the case shape, that crystal, the dial design, the applied indices, and even the hands to some degree. It's just a cool looking watch. Now, the Q on the dial, of course, means this is a quartz watch. Inside this watch, you actually have a Seiko PC33A, a fairly cheap and affordable quartz movement. It has a quick set date function. No need for a quick set day function because, well, with it being a quartz movement and with every single week having 7 days in it, there shouldn't really be any need to adjust the day until the battery runs out. But there will be some months where you'll have to adjust the date, hence the quick set date function. And unfortunately, with it being a fairly cheap, affordable quartz movement, there's quite a lot of slack in that seconds hand. So you'll see it's fairly accurate, hitting the markers on the way up between 6 and 12. But then on the way down from 12 to 6, oh, there's quite a lot of slack, isn't there? Look at the sag in that seconds hand. As much as I think it is a really interesting and actually to some degree beautiful watch, I am a little bit disappointed in the movement and also the bracelet and just the overall feel of the watch. I guess that is predominantly down to the bracelet feeling really quite thin and cheap. Maybe that is in keeping with how they felt back in the day, but still. Yeah, I'm just so surprised how thin and flimsy this bracelet feels. But how does it feel when it's on your wrist? Well, there's not a lot of weight in it, but at least you're not feeling just how thin and flimsy that bracelet is. But yeah, I guess I was hoping for a little bit more weight and perhaps a slightly better feel of quality. But I like the way it looks. Yeah, I do like the way it looks. There's no denying it is an interesting and to some degree beautiful watch. It sits fairly nicely on my wrist. Look, it doesn't sit too proud. Yeah, I am a little bit disappointed. I'm not going to lie. Maybe this is why it's potentially being discontinued. Maybe it's not been received with as much enthusiasm and vigor as they anticipated. We must remember it is still a fairly affordable watch, but yeah, I've been left feeling a little bit flat. Well, there is some loom on the dial and on the hands, so let's perform a quick loom degradation test. The purpose of these tests is just to see how much the loom degrades over the first 5 minutes, and from that, hopefully we can gauge whether or not the loom is any good. So I'm going to speed up the footage now. Well, that's now been 5 minutes, and as you can see, the loom on the dial is actually still quite legible. It's pretty decent. There are some fairly strong loom dots on the dial, but they're pretty useless if you can't see the hands. So, yeah, it's not great, is it? So in summary, I like the idea behind this watch and this range of watches. They produce some fantastically good looking watches in the Timex Q range. I must say before I continue, I love the print and the applied logo on the dial. Look at that quartz at the bottom there. That looks awesome. But yes, I just think that despite there being some really good looking watches in this range, they're lacking, well, a little bit of quality, I think, anyway. I think they might have been better off just adding a few dollars or pounds to their build spec sheet and perhaps improving the way these watches feel in our hands. I mean, they are affordable to some degree, but still, the list price for this watch is £160. That's over $200. Yeah, I think it's too much for this watch. So if you are thinking of picking up one of these anytime soon, maybe head over to my eBay store because this one might be available very, very soon. And if it's not available, it probably already sold. I'm sure I made a massive loss on this one. But anyway, I'm still glad I got it in to handle and take a look at. Gorgeous dial, really beautiful dial and applied indices, and really interesting case shape and side profile with that crystal, but nowhere near enough for me to really enjoy and appreciate this watch for the money they're asking for it, for the retail price anyway. So yeah, those are my final thoughts on this watch.